Hello, everyone. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Against the Odds. So, last week we had an all iconic Masters Against the Odds poll, and in the end, it was the crazy giant shaman Rosheen Meanderer coming out on top, which means this week we are heading to Modern to play a deck I'm calling XXX Stompy, basically X-Spell Tribal, using Rosheen Meanderer to make oodles of mana. A quick reminder before we break down the deck: if you enjoy Against the Odds and the other series here on the channel, it would be spectacular of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down at the bottom of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let's talk XXX Stompy, starting with the winning card. The main card of the deck, Rosheen Meanderer, is a very interesting legend. So legendary creature, giant shaman, 4 mana, you get a 4/4, which isn't a horrible deal. I mean, 4 mana, 4/4, yeah, roughly on curve, although not super powerful as a body by modern standards. However, the big deal is it can tap to add 4 mana to our mana pool. 4 mana! It's a 4/4 that taps for 4 mana, which is actually pretty insane. I mean, picture this: we ramp into our Rosheen Meanderer. It means we already have 4 mana, tap it for 4 more mana, make our land drop the next turn. That means we have 9 mana the turn after we cast Rosheen Meanderer, which is just really absurd. However, this power comes with a restriction. We can only spend the mana from Rosheen Meanderer on costs that contain X. So, what X spells are we using to power out with Rosheen Meanderer? And the big one is Apocalypse Hydra. Probably looks a little crazy in Modern, but it actually works incredibly well with Rosheen Meanderer. If you look back at that curve we were talking about, need 4 mana to cast Meanderer. Next turn we untap. We have 4 more mana from Meanderer. Maybe make our land drop. That's 9 mana. That means we can Apocalypse Hydra for 9 mana, which gives us a really huge creature. It'll actually be a 14/14 because Apocalypse Hydra, which costs X and 2, comes into play with X counters, except if X is 5 or more, which it almost always is if we have Rosheen Meanderer out, they double. So if we cast it for 7 mana, we get a 10/10. We cast it for 9 mana, we get a 14/14, and it just spirals out of control from there. It also has this Walking Ballista X ability where we can ping creatures or players. The difference is we actually got to spend mana on it, and that's not an X cost, so it's a little slower as far as a pinger. When Walking Ballista is just like remove a counter, shoot something, Apocalypse Hydra got to spend mana to do it, but still can shoot down Birds of Paradise, can go at our opponent's face, and just be a really massive creature. Speaking of Walking Ballista, we have literal Walking Ballista as well, because it works really well with Meanderer. Going back to our curve, 4 mana for Meanderer, 4 more mana produced by Meanderer. That lets us play a 4/4 Walking Ballista, which is not only a pretty big creature, but it's a lot of ping damage. Then we can always add more counters to it as the game goes along. Plus, Walking Ballista gives us something we can play on turn 2 just to kind of slow down the game. Chump block, shoot down small creatures on our opponent's side of the battlefield. So just another perfect X spell. Beyond Apocalypse Hydra and Walking Ballista, we have some more Hydras in our deck. I almost called this deck Hydra Stompy because we got a lot of Hydra action. Pulukronos World Eater. Remember, Rosheen Meanderer doesn't say add mana to cast spells that have X in their casting cost. We can use that mana to pay any costs that contain X, which means even though we had to spend real mana to cast Pulukronos, we can use Rosheen Meanderer to power up the monstrous ability, turning Pulukronos into like a Wrath, also just another massive creature where we're shooting down a bunch of our opponent's smaller creatures and having like an 8/8 and 9/9 after we go monstrous. And then Mistcutter Hydra, just really big and hasty, kind of sideboard tech for the blue matchup since it can't be countered, protection from blue, dodges, cryptic commands and remands and all that kind of stuff. But coming down with haste like the weird green fireball is actually really sweet, especially with Rosheen Meanderer mana. If you look back at the curve that we keep talking about, 4 mana from Meanderer, 4 more from Meanderer, make our land drop, that gives us an 8/8 hasty, can't be countered, protection from blue Mistcutter Hydra, coming down really early in the the game. Beyond our creatures, we have some X spells to take advantage of Rosheen Meanderer. Bonfire of the Damned, super sweet. Sweeps away our opponent's board, does a bunch of damage to our opponent's face. If we can get lucky and miracle it with a Meander out, pretty possible we're dealing like 10 damage to our opponent, to all of their creatures, just essentially winning the game on the spot. And then Banefire doesn't sweep away all of our opponent's creatures, but gives us a huge uncounterable burn spell to deal the last points of damage, so get in some damage with our Hydras, and then Banefire our opponent's face to close out the game. We also have a single Commune with Lava, kind of our red version of Sphinx's Revelation. The downside is we got to use the spells in our next turn. So we want to cast this on our opponent's end step, maybe X6, X8, X10, draw a ton of cards, cast as many of them as possible on our next turn, get a bunch of value that way, but it's a good way to dig through our deck and find more action. Finally, we even have a land that works with our Rosheen Meanderer, and that's Kessig Wolfrun, which is actually incredibly scary with Rosheen Meanderer. Not only does this pump our creature, the bigger deal is it gives our creature trample. So that means when we cast that huge 12-12, 14-14 Apocalypse Hydra or a huge Mistcutter Hydra, we can actually close out the game through random Lingering Souls tokens, elves that are chump blocking, all that stuff, by just activating Kessig Wolfrun, trampling over for the win. So that's kind of the final piece of our creature stompy plan. Otherwise, we have Arbor Elf and Utopia Sprawl, mostly to ramp into our Rosheen Meanderer. Just playing Meanderer on turn 4, a bit too slow. Like, that curve we keep coming back to. If we're doing that turn 4 and then on turn 5 casting a huge Apocalypse Hydra, in Modern we're probably dead by that point. But with the nut draw, thanks to Arbor Elf and Utopia Sprawl, we can cast Rosheen Meanderer as soon as turn 2, which means as soon as turn 3, we can be playing that huge 12-12 Apocalypse Hydra and just taking over the game. Or Bonfire the Damning our opponent, or Banefire away their creature, their life total. So this just speeds up our deck significantly by letting us get down our Rosheen Meanderer turn early. Plus, it helps us cast our big stuff, our Apocalypse Hydra, doubling counters, etc., big walking ballistas, when we don't happen to have a Rosheen Meanderer, which is one of the concerns of our deck. We can't rely just on Meanderer because we have so much stuff that wants a ton of mana. We got to make sure we have backup plans for ramping as well, and that's where Arbor Elf and Utopia Sprawl comes in. Finally, we got Blood Moon, and with the kind of slowness of our deck, lots of expensive things going on, Blood Moon is just the perfect card to slow down the game. We can build our mana base in a way where we got lots of basic forests, we're straight green-red, so it's very easy for us to support Blood Moon. We can cast it pretty regularly on turn 2 thanks to Arbor Elf and Utopia Sprawl, and it doesn't just win us the game in most matchups, but it's going to keep us from dying to Valakuts, from dying to Tron, and buy us enough turns that we can actually do all of our cool Hydras, Stompy, Expel, Stompy, Rosheen Meanderer tricks that just otherwise wouldn't work because our deck would be a little bit too slow by a turn or two. Blood Moon buys us that turn or two we need to do our really cool, really janky, really sweet stuff. So it's really important just to getting us a little bit more time to do sweet things. Finally, Lightning Bolt. Just a removal spell, can go to our opponent's face in a pinch, but mostly to take down that Birds of Paradise on turn 1, that Goblin Guide on turn 1, that Dark Confidant on turn 2, all that kind of stuff. Just disrupt our opponent a little bit while we're setting up our powerful late game. Mana base wise, bunch of fetch lands, 8 in all. Also, a few dual lands that are fetchable, a lot of forests, only one mountain. Because we have Blood Moon, we want to make sure we can fetch out basic forests. We want at least 2 on the battlefield, 3 is fine as well. But we fetch those out early, so then when we play our Blood Moon, it's not really hurting us. Our non-basics become mountains anyway, so our mana works really smoothly, even with a Blood Moon. And then the Kessig Wolfrun that we talked about might seem weird with Blood Moon, but it's fine. If we don't have a Blood Moon, Kessig Wolfrun is awesome. If we do have a Blood Moon, we obviously can't Wolfrun with it, but it's still just a mountain, so it's not a bad thing. In the sideboard, Mistcutter Hydra, more copies to come in against control decks, essentially. Great if our opponent's on the counterspell plan. Just make it super huge, hasty, close out the game really quickly. Kitchen Finks for aggro if we're playing against, like, burn decks, any aggressive decks, blocks a couple times, gains us some life. Relic of Progenitus, Surgical Extraction to help against graveyard decks. Also have a bunch of different removal. Beast Within can kill creatures if we need it to. Also can get rid of lands against Tron as kind of backup Blood Moons to help in those matchups, gets Planeswalkers, kind of gets anything, and our creatures are big enough that a 3/3 isn't really going to kill us most often, because hopefully, during the time that we're slowing our opponent down with Beast Within, we're able to cast one of our huge Hydras or something like that. Nature's Claim for artifacts or enchantments, Vandalblast, artifacts, great against Affinity, Anger of the Gods also for aggro decks, sweeping away the board against decks like Affinity, and that is XXX Stompy for Modern, and that's our Against the Odds deck for this week. So, is the deck gonna work? And I'm not 100% sure. The good news is, Blood Moon is able to steal games. The question's gonna be, how good is the rest of the deck? Can Apocalypse Hydra be Modern playable? Can Polukranos and Mistcutter Hydra, are those cards actually good enough for Modern? Is Rosheen Meanderer fast enough to have an impact? How quickly can we get our huge 12/12 Apocalypse Hydra? Our 14/14 Apocalypse Hydra? I don't know, but I think it's actually going to be pretty sweet. I'm really excited for this one. I feel like this deck really harnesses the power of Rosheen Meanderer pretty well, and when I think of the best case scenarios where we're like playing Meanderer on turn 2, playing a 12/12 Apocalypse Hydra on turn 3, that seems like it should be pretty hard for a lot of decks in Modern to keep up with, because we could just go so far over the top with our huge X mana thanks to Rosheen Meanderer. So hopefully some sweet things happen. I think it's going to be pretty nice. Anyway, that is XXX Stompy for Modern. That's our Against Odds deck for this week. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.